have you steer us, given this is your passion and profession. And we also have some questions over here that might help us kind of spark our thinking. So maybe you can tee off a little State of the Union, and then we can bring in some folks to chat with us.
Yeah, sounds great, Grant. Well, nice to see everybody. Great to be here. And I think the opening phrase that we can kick this topic off with is that, things from a talent perspective have never changed this fast before, but yet they'll never change this slow again. There has been, I would say, a major shift as it relates to architecture, design, and engineering. And happy to dive in on some experience share and what we've seen at Birchworks as the roles have evolved and how workforce really orchestration has become a primary topic and board level priority for many enterprise organizations, mid-market, and also private equity. So looking forward to talking with our two esteemed panelists today on their experience and on the topic. What I'll kind of lead with is first, just maybe opening it up a little bit and, talking about, where we've been just the last 5 years. So maybe close the aperture just a bit and look at the last 5 years. Coming from the pandemic, we saw a very strong demand cycle in 21 and 22, some of the strongest demand that we've seen over the last 30 years. And that demand was really a response to drive, a more, data-driven organization to be able to scale and build more righteous ETL, more, foundational infrastructure to support really a more digital-first, platform capability. And then, starting in 2023, we saw interest rates start to increase. We saw a lot of uncertainty be introduced into the market, both geopolitically and otherwise. And there were layoffs starting in the tech industry. And those layoffs continue to proliferate across all industries. So it was an industry agnostic layoff cycle. And we saw demand or hiring and or job switching go down exponentially in 23 and 24. Last year was kind of the combination of those 4 years. We saw demand starting to come back, but only in very niche categories. We believe that there are riches and niches, and we saw extreme demand in specific domain and industry niche areas. And that demand has really accelerated through the second half of 2025 into 2026. In those specific domain areas that we can double click on today as well. So wanted to set the table and provide a little backdrop just from an experience perspective at Birchworks, from an executive search and consulting perspective on where we've seen demand, and looking forward to diving deeper into the topic today. But I'll turn it over to my two panelists and maybe ask their experience over the last few years and what they've seen, both from their own personal marketability and how maybe they've been courted for opportunities, and maybe how they've also seen some changes in what they're looking to hire for to scale their organizations.
Yeah, so maybe I'll take a first crack at that. For those I haven't met, my name is Mike Fulton. I'm enterprise architect at Koch, but I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Ohio State. And so I've seen this personally. I've seen this journey within my organizations. I've been in a few different organizations over the 5-year time frame that we're talking about. And then I've seen this from a faculty perspective, the impact on students. And it's been a really, really interesting time frame as we think about the pandemic and how we were all remote, and all of a sudden we now had a talent pool that was global in nature. We could reach out and grab the best people anywhere in the world. But then we had this wave of return to office that really started to contract the talent pools once again. We started looking for people sitting in specific locations and asking individuals to relocate. And I think that had a big sort of challenge to the market and people's mobility, because they realized, having experienced the pandemic, that they really could do a lot of the work that we as enterprise architects do from anywhere and do that very, very successfully. They've been forced to for several years. And so why should I leave the beautiful beach in Florida or the great Midwest that I love the culture and my family's there to go work in Minneapolis or go work in, I know, Grant, I was picking on you, or Chicago or wherever else it might be, right? So we've seen a lot of those different dynamics, but then I think you also hit on that idea of data, right? And I feel like we've been talking about how data is the foundation and it's so important, but even today in the AI age where data is even more important than it's ever been, I still feel like we don't have it right. And so do we have the right talent out there? Do people understand how to fix the data problems that we have in organizations? I think that continues to be a little bit of a challenge, but yeah, there's so much we could kind of jump off and dig into on this topic. But it's definitely been a very dynamic market over the last several years. And we're just seeing that continue as we see more demand for those true experts and masters, as we were talking about in some of the earlier conversations here at Switch On and Can today. But we've also seen at the lower end of the market, the people that are a little bit more novice, those entry-level people really struggling in a way they never have before, struggling to find jobs when they come out of college or when they try to find that first job. It's a lot of different dynamics in the marketplace right now. So maybe I'll shut up and let Randy talk a little bit.
Thanks, Mike. And I don't have much to add to that. It's hard to even remember back to 2021. We're kind of second round of COVID hit early 2021 with a particularly viral strain, and kind of we did a sort of, I wouldn't call it a temporary lockdown, but everybody got cautious again. So the whole idea of working remotely continued to be thumbs up, no problem. And, I would say one of the bigger disruptions, I would agree, is the kind of forcing people back to a headquarters or, a major office. I know it's happening in a lot of different companies. I know that, I used to live near Bentonville, Arkansas. And, the big company in Bentonville said, yep, if you're going to work here, you're going to have to live here. And so a lot of people left the company, a lot of really good people, because they didn't want to make that move. I think the other part that's happened that's a lot more interesting in the last 2 years is that the whole, I think we're probably going to talk about AI here in a little bit, but that's been the biggest shift that I've seen. And that one's kind of going crazy. And I've got one daughter who is still in college. So I try to talk to her once a week to see what she's doing that's new. And so she's not a computer science person, although she's wildlife biology, but she had to take a course in Python for statistical biology. And she found out she loves it. And I said, well, you need to stick with it. That'll definitely differentiate you in your field. And so now I find her doing all kinds of, she's talking about tools and AI that I didn't hear about it. And I'm kind of pretty close to it. So I think staying close to, the young folks, we talked about that a little bit earlier in one of the prior sessions, is that they're learning a lot of things new really fast, but they don't really know how to use it at an enterprise level or even an organizational level. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to help them with that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'll throw out to your point, Randy. One of the really cool things that the university I'm a part of, Ohio State, has done over the last year or so, we've introduced a major university-wide initiative to drive AI fluency across the university. And when we talk about AI fluency, what do we really mean? We mean that in 3 years, because we started this a year ago, every single student that comes out of Ohio State with a degree will understand not just a little bit about the technology that goes into AI, but much, much more importantly, how do they use AI in the context of the work that they've signed up to do in their job, right? So I love that example of your daughter needing to know a little bit of the tech in biology, because that's what is going to be needed in every single field. It sounds kind of weird, but it's going to be what we have to have in every single field across our entire our entire workforce.
That's right,
I'll
Mike.
just add one more thing,
Yep.
Michael, before we go on, is that I think the curriculum, and it sounds like Mike Fulton's already on it, but the curriculums in the colleges are going to have to change. I think you're still going to have practice level focuses, but in every one of those, I think becoming an entrepreneur and a self-starter is going to become a very, very important talent and capability to have coming out of college. And I think because we don't know what jobs are going to look like in 4 years.
Right.
So they just need to be able to adapt to whatever is coming. Entrepreneurs tend to do that better than most.
Yep.
Well, maybe
Great
I'll throw
point,
it back
Randy.
to you, Michael, because one of the things that you and I have talked about, right, is how in your business you're seeing from your customers' demands the evolution of jobs today, right? I remember last time you and I talked about how much demand you're seeing for forward deployed engineers in your space. Maybe you could talk just a little bit about that. And I think then Grant's got maybe a question or two from the
I
audience.
got an idea that we could have Sandesh jump in, who's joined us remotely. So Michael, we collect your thoughts, and Sandesh, maybe you can ask the first question of the three online after Michael responds.
Sure. Hey, hello everyone.
Hey,
my name is
Sandesh.
Sandesh. Again, I'm based out of Chicago, CAN member out of Chicago as well. I remember we had this conversation, Michael, sometime back in our Texas event last year, right? The thing that Randy mentioned is the adaptive change. The new talent that's coming in the market might not be ready and might not have seen the bigger picture. That's typically the new talent fail to see that. How you can maintain or enable that culture within the new talent coming in the market where they start seeing the bigger picture,
Could
bigger
you
value.
speak up a little bit more, or maybe closer to the mic? I'm not sure, but it's hard to hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Is it better? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So the question is how we can make sure we enable the talent that's coming in to be market ready, seeing the biggest picture, because as a technologist, we always think that the technology is driving the business, but that's not always the case, right? It's the business driving the technology. So how we can make that talent or like these new students coming in the market to actually look at the bigger picture, look at the business value coming out of their technology investments or the skills they're bringing into the market.
That's a great question, Sandesh, and Mike and Randy. Thanks for those insights. Those were fantastic. And I think we're, to answer your question and to kind of pull together what both Mike and Randy shared, is that the technology is changing in the enterprise. And I want to double click on this because I think it's very important in how it's going to impact talent from this point on. There are some significant signals that are happening right now in the enterprise, and this will continue to mature across the small to medium-sized business segment and across private equity and the portcos. And I want to provide a term here, and it's called interoperable infrastructure. For so long as architects and engineers, we've built really solid legacy infrastructure, and we've seen different evolutions along that path, whether it was going on-prem to off-prem to co-located, building an edge for elasticity and latency, doing a lift and shift for the cloud. All of this infrastructure is in place today. But what is a monumental change is the introduction of the frontier LLM. And this is the next semantic layer that is going to support an agentic capability at the enterprise. And this LLM semantic layer introduction is sitting on top of legacy infrastructure. So we need to think about the architecture and design a little bit now differently. And we're already seeing how Anthropic, OpenAI, et cetera, are building their channel partnership ecosystems right now, very similar to the hyperscalers did, 10, 15 years ago. So we are at the cusp of a very significant shift. And what that shift is going to drive is a change in the type of resources organizations are looking for. We have seen a 375% increase in demand 375% for a skill titled forward deployed engineer. The forward deployed engineer, in very simplistic terms, think about it as a Venn diagram. It's an engineer who understands technology, who understands analytics, and then who also understands business. And in the middle is really this core skill category. Organizations are going to be, in certain capacities, doing more with less. And they really want to enable more higher productivity producers, but maybe less of them in specific areas inside their funnel, whether it's technology and building interoperable infrastructure to support an agentic capability and connecting that capability to a business use case, or even, from a operations perspective within the funnel, finding low value activities that can be automated to accentuate those higher value activities. And that's really what's driving business demand today. So individuals who are positioned to be able to be able to build interoperable infrastructure, and then B, be able to connect the agentic capability to a desired business outcome are very, very highly sought after skill categories. The other thing I want to double click on real quick, Mike, because I think this will be interesting and it kind of aligns to where we're also seeing an extreme amount of demand is RLHF. I'm not sure, have you heard the term RLHF? So it's
No.
okay. It's reinforcement learning and human feedback. So what's happening right now is that the experts, whether it's biology, whether it's a CPA, whether it's an MD, whether it's a very astute lawyer. I'm at a conference here today at the Willis Tower talking about this. The human experts are being brought in to train the model itself, and this is called fine tuning. And it's helping to elevate the level of intelligence that currently exists on the frontier enterprise LLMs and on the small language models that sit on top of them within the specific organization. So it's a very exciting time, but these are the skill categories of the future that are driving tremendous demand based on AI.
Yeah, and so maybe I'll go back to Sandesh's question on the other end of the spectrum, right? Because I think Michael really nailed the technical kind of more high end of the market. For those folks that are a little bit younger, that are a little bit newer coming into the market, obviously it's a really, really challenging time for those folks. And one of the things I like to think about when I talk to people that are kind of in that spot is it's actually, to me, not a lot of difference than how we actually think about the AI itself and what the AI needs to be really good. What have we been talking a lot about the last couple of days related to what AI needs to be really good? It needs not just the content, but it needs context, right? And I think when I think about kind of advising someone that's new into the workforce, the advice I always give them is don't just do your job. That's your content, right? You want to be really good at your job and your content, but you also have to understand the context of what's going on around you, right? And so what I found historically is that the IT field is a very, very sort of siloed career path in most instances. You start as a developer and you get promoted to a senior developer, and then you lead a team and you go up the stack, or you're in infrastructure and you start and you kind of go up the infrastructure stack, or you're in operations or in project management. But you don't see a lot of people that move in between the silos, right? And a lot of times people don't move around until even they get up into the C-suite, when they actually have to have understanding of everything. But the power really is that when you understand what's going on around you, you understand that context of, as a developer, what does it mean to hand that code over to somebody that has to support that 24/7, right? You write a lot better code when you sat in that operations seat and actually picked up a phone call in the middle of the night, right? Because you got that context.
Yeah, Mike, so that's kind of, that's the forward deployed, quote unquote, nomenclature. It was deemed by the Palantir CEO forward deployed. It's a military term, because what it's doing is it's breaking down silos, and we are seeing those silos starting to come down. And the demand and what's really marketable is individuals, to your point, Mike, who have more of the business acumen and sense of understanding not just what to do, but why they're doing it. And that is becoming very much, um, a key to what organizations continue to hire for, and these silos are breaking down faster than we've seen in the past in terms of software engineering, the traditional SDLC, infrastructure, data engineering. A lot of these are becoming kind of blended, because the reality is you can do so much more vibe coding and you have so much more capability at your fingertips that, it doesn't have to be as a traditional hands-on keyboard role as it used to be. And so again, you're finding that this Venn diagram, I think it's the best way to describe it, of technology, analytics, and business is really coming together, and having attributes in all three of those categories are really what organizations are looking for in the future and currently.
Anything to add to that, Randy?
Nothing to add to that. I guess as a last thought, I would say that in addition to being, when we're talking about talent, looking for talent, trying to develop talent, in addition to that entrepreneurial spirit, and it's all about curiosity, learning, and experimenting. And we've heard that from multiple different sessions today. But I would just encourage that both in terms of the talent supply. If you're looking, you need to be doing and experimenting, and if you're hiring, you want to hire the people that are already doing it, and not just ready to learn. That's it.
I love that, Randy. Mike, I'm gonna add one quick thing there too. We talked about experimenting and intellectual curiosity. Like Mike, I also teach at the University of Chicago Booth, their CAIO program, and then their DSI, Data Science Institute program. And one thing that we're recommending is that our students start to pick up a MacBook Mini and use OpenClaw and start to tinker and just experiment. And many of our students are, they are building their own agents on OpenClaw within a MacBook Mini. So it's it's a very protected environment, and it's not exposed to any outside corporate email, etc. And it's a wonderful place to learn. And, Randy, I think to your point, those are the individuals that we're finding really start to pick up momentum in the market. And organizations who are hiring are okay if they maybe haven't had professional enterprise experience, but they really like to hear about what they're doing personally to tinker and learn about building agentic capabilities.
Yeah, and I think for one final thought to kind of close things out here, absolutely, we talked a lot about talent, how the market looks, and kind of our own individual journeys as architects and what we need to do to maintain our own talent. But I would also offer up that all of you, if you're watching this show, you're probably an architect. You're probably considered an expert in your organization. We owe it to the next generation to reach out and help them navigate this journey. For those that are coming up behind us, this is a really, really challenging time. So find someone in your organization or someone fresh out of college that you can maybe offer a helping hand to, offer a little bit of advice to, help coach, help mentor. Those folks need us more than ever. And all of you on the line have something really cool to offer them. So I urge you to share that as you go along the way. So Grant, I think we're going to turn it back over to you as we wrap up.
That sounds great. Well, thank you guys very much. Thank you, Michael. Sorry, I just took you off screen by accident, but I really appreciate the conversation you just led us through. Sandesh, thank you for joining us. And there we go. Now I'm on camera. Hi. We'll get ready for our next speakers. So thank you guys so much. If you could pull the chairs over.